Welcome to Cupid's Corner, where love stories come alive. Whether you're a hopeless romantic or just looking for a touch of warmth in your day, you've come to the right place. Sit back, relax, and let the tales of romance sweep you off your feet.
The park was a sanctuary for Claire, a place where time seemed to pause, allowing her to escape the relentless demands of her life. The old maple tree, with its sprawling branches and golden leaves, had become her refuge. Today, as she sat on the weathered bench beneath its canopy, the crisp autumn air carried a sense of nostalgia. She watched the leaves flutter to the ground in a mesmerizing dance of colors, each one a reminder of the seasons that had passed since her marriage had crumbled. She hadn't expected to see Jack here, not after everything that had happened between them. The sight of his familiar figure approaching stirred something deep within her, a mix of unease and longing. He walked with a hesitance that was new to her, his steps slow and measured as if unsure of his welcome. It had been 9 months since they last saw each other, 9 months since their marriage ended in a haze of frustration and heartache. "Hey, Claire," Jack said softly when he was close enough, stopping a few feet away. "Hey," she replied, forcing a smile despite the rapid beating of her heart. Seeing him again brought back a flood of emotions she had worked hard to suppress: pain, regret, but also a flicker of the warmth they once shared. They stood in awkward silence, the air thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Claire couldn't help but notice the changes in him, his hair a little longer, his face more lined, yet his brown eyes still held the same kindness she remembered. He looked at her with a mix of hope and uncertainty, and she wondered what had brought him back here, to this spot they once considered theirs. "I was just thinking about the tree," Jack finally said, nodding toward the maple. "Remember when we carved our initials in it?" Claire's heart clenched at the memory. It was one of those moments that seemed insignificant at the time but had taken on new meaning as the years passed. "Yeah," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I still have my copy of the picture." Jack chuckled softly, though it was tinged with sadness. "Me too. I always thought it was silly." But now, his voice trailed off, and the weight of their shared past settled between them. "Do you ever miss those days?" Claire hesitated, the truth lodged in her throat. "Sometimes," she admitted, her pulse quickening. "But I try not to dwell on it."
As Jack looked around the park, it felt both familiar and foreign, as though time had moved forward without him. The vibrant colors of the season, the rustling of leaves beneath their feet, all brought back memories of a time when he and Claire were happy, before life's pressures and their own shortcomings drove a wedge between them. Sitting here with her now, he felt an overwhelming sense of regret. He had spent the past months trying to rebuild his life, focusing on his work and hobbies, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something vital was missing. That something was Claire. The thought of losing her for good haunted him, and now, seeing her again, he felt both terrified and hopeful. "Do you think we could ever?" His voice faltered as he struggled to find the right words. The question was too big, too fraught with the possibility of rejection. "Do you think we could ever be us again?" He saw her tense slightly, her eyes searching his as if trying to gauge his sincerity. Her response was measured, cautious. "I've thought about it. A lot," she admitted. "But I don't know if we can just go back to what we were. Too much has happened." Jack nodded, knowing she was right. Their marriage had ended in a slow unraveling of their bond, one argument after another, until they were left with nothing but silence. Yet, despite everything, he couldn't ignore the glimmer of hope in her eyes, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. "I miss you, Claire." "I miss us," he said, his voice thick with emotion. It was the most honest thing he had said in a long time, and it felt like a relief to finally admit it.
They spent the next hour talking, easing into a conversation that felt both familiar and strange. Claire listened as Jack spoke about his life since their separation. He had started working at a local bakery, crafting artisan breads, a skill he had picked up as a form of therapy. The passion in his voice as he described the process, the joy it brought him, was something she hadn't seen in him for years. "I thought it might bring me peace," Jack said, a small smile tugging at his lips. But what I really missed was having someone to share it with. I thought of you every day." His words were like a balm to her heart, soothing the ache she had carried since their separation. There was a sincerity in his tone that made her believe he had changed, that maybe they both had. The tension between them began to dissipate, replaced by a warmth that felt comforting and new. A daring thought crossed her mind, one that made her pulse quicken. "What if we took it slow?" she suggested, the words tumbling out before she could stop herself. "Like, starting with coffee? Just to see where this goes?" For a moment, she feared he might reject the idea, but then he reached for her hand, their fingers brushing accidentally. The touch was electric, sending a shiver down her spine. "Coffee sounds great," Jack replied, his smile widening. "I'd love that."
As they walked out of the park together, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. The air was crisp, and the scent of fallen leaves filled his senses. Beside him, Claire looked radiant, her laughter ringing in his ears like the sweetest music. He couldn't help but think of the many times they had walked this path before, but now, it felt different, more precious. They took things slowly, starting with coffee at their favorite cafe. The place had always been special to them, a haven where they could escape the world and simply be together. Sitting across from her, Jack found himself rediscovering the woman he had fallen in love with years ago. She was still the same in many ways, the way she laughed, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about something she was passionate about. But there was also something new, a maturity that came from the experiences they had both endured. Days turned into weeks, and their connection grew stronger with each passing day. They were careful, cautious, as if afraid to break the fragile thing they were rebuilding. But with each shared story, each touch, Jack felt the walls between them slowly start to crumble. One evening, as they strolled beneath the now-bare maple tree, Jack found himself reaching for her hand. It was a simple gesture, but it felt monumental. Their fingers intertwined, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of belonging. "Claire," he said, stopping in his tracks. His heart was pounding in his chest, but he knew he had to say what was on his mind. What if we didn't learn from our mistakes just to avoid them, but to embrace the journey together? She looked at him, her breath hitching as she processed his words. He could see the uncertainty in her eyes, but also a flicker of something else, hope. "I want that, Jack," she finally whispered. "I really do."
As winter began to creep in, Claire felt a warmth in her heart that had been missing for too long. Each moment spent with Jack was like a step toward healing, toward rediscovering the love they once shared. Their laughter filled the air, their conversations flowed with ease, and the bond between them grew stronger every day. One evening, as they sat in the cafe, their hands intertwined on the table, Claire realized just how much she had missed him. The first time they kissed after their separation had been beneath the maple tree, a hesitant, tentative kiss that quickly turned into something more. It was as if all the years of hurt and misunderstanding melted away in that moment, replaced by a deep, abiding love. But it wasn't just about rekindling old flames. They both knew that the past would always be a part of them, a shadow that lingered just out of reach. Yet, they were determined to face it together, to learn from their mistakes and create something even stronger. As Jack pulled her close that night, beneath a sky full of stars, Claire knew that this time they were ready. Ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to rebuild their love on a foundation of trust, communication, and mutual respect. A second chance was theirs for the taking, and as they stood beneath the maple tree, where their journey had begun so many years ago, Claire knew that love, once lost, had found its way back home.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to click on the bell for more heartfelt tales. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Let's spread the love, because everyone deserves a bit of romance in their life.